Good afternoon, everyone. This is Enrique Sanchez, founder and director of Spanish United. Today we have a very special guest. Would you be kind enough to introduce the audience, please?
Hey, Enrique, how you doing? This is Howard Breuer. I'm the CEO of Newsroom PR.
Welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
As we had spoken, we had met at the LA District Attorney's event. Was able to communicate with you about a couple of things. And anyway, one of the questions that we have for Spanish United is that one of the questions would be how do legal firms make themselves available to the Hispanic community? Because many Hispanics feel that they're not able to reach out to many legal firms, legal services. So that's one of the questions we would like to ask you for this afternoon.
Yeah, a great question. Thank you. And I kind of have two answers, because the first is, the basic stuff. And this was shared with me by one of our bilingual team members. We do a lot to get attorneys press in Spanish as well as English. One of our team members who is bilingual also used to work in legal aid down in the San Antonio and Austin area with a lot of the Latino community. And it's important for the attorneys to have bilingual staff, educational workshops on topics important to the Hispanic community, a social media presence that caters to both the English and Spanish language speakers, and also affordable services. And beyond that, there are other things that a law firm can do to be very accessible to Spanish clients. And I've seen this with a specific firm that we work with here in Los Angeles. We've been working with them for about 6.5 years. They're West Coast trial lawyers based here in Los Angeles, and they're a personal injury firm. And they did a few interesting things going back about 2 years ago. And keep in mind, this isn't a firm whose leadership or whose demographic of their lawyers is predominantly Hispanic, but they nevertheless place a high priority on connecting with and being a good resource to the Hispanic community, and a resource that they're comfortable with. So what they did a couple of years ago, and this is very interesting, well, they created a parallel operation and website, Abogados de la Costa Oeste, which is Spanish for West Coast trial lawyers. But even more importantly, they used to have offices downtown, one of the big high-rise buildings, on the 35th floor. And you know how those places are, you go in and there's intimidating, or to some intimidating looking, security people, and you have to show your ID. And for certain folks, especially if they feel that, if they fear authorities, maybe they're coming to the lawyer because they're already having problems with the authorities. Don't love the idea of having their IDs checked. And so what West Coast trial lawyers did was they moved out of that skyscraper at 350 South Grand, and they renovated an old office building on Hope Street, and around 12th. So like just a couple of blocks from the LA Live crypto.com complex there. And it's just a freestanding building. There's no security. There's no other firms or companies. It's just the 3-story West Coast trial lawyers building that folks can just roll right up, or Uber right up to the front, walk right in, and see their attorneys. And of course, they've done other things that we do. We place the attorneys there, on Univision and Telemundo a lot, so they can get the word out to the Spanish community as well as the English. But I thought, when you talk about, and I know we're going to talk about this, how many Spanish Hispanic attorneys of Hispanic descent are there in Los Angeles and California, and how bad those ratios look. Those are important things to look at, but it's also, you know, these types of things that a firm can do, regardless of whether they are themselves entirely Spanish or a very more diverse range of attorneys. Things that they can do to be more accessible to the Spanish community.
Mhm. Yeah, because a lot of Hispanic people, especially because of many of them are poor people, and many of them don't have the resources. Unfortunately, justice is not blind. So, according to the law, according to the book, justice is supposed to be impartial. But unfortunately, the way our society is, there's institutional racism where people of color, particularly Hispanic people, tend to be affected the most. And many of them, because since they don't have the money to either post bail or get a good lawyer, many of them are forced to take plea deals that don't fit their best interest. And in Spanish United, we don't handle legal cases, but we do represent different Hispanic people in the different civil rights issues. And we try to get them the best referral services possible because there is an issue of mass incarceration of Hispanic men in the country. A lot of Hispanic people don't get due process, primarily because they either don't speak Spanish. I mean English. I'm sorry, if they don't, and also that they don't know the law, they don't know their rights, and especially if they don't have a lawyer that is there to represent them. Unfortunately, in many cases, the public defenders, from what I've learned, is that even though officially they're court appointed attorneys, they're basically brokers. They basically make deals. They don't really counsel people that really need counseling. They just tell them, you know what, X, Y, and Z is going to be put on the table, and I recommend take Z, so that way you will avoid going to jail, or you'll have less time being in jail. So it's like justice is not really being executed the way it's supposed to be. And I'm seeing this a lot with many Hispanic people, that because of not having the resources, they're the ones that suffer the most. Like what George Gascon was saying last Thursday over at the DA panel. Many people of color, poor people in general, are the ones that suffer the most when it comes to getting representation, or getting justice. So I think it's very important that there needs to be legal services and also lawyers that are not only Spanish speaking, that are Hispanic, where Hispanic clients will feel more comfortable resonating with. Because from what I've seen, a lot of lawyers today tend not to be, there are Hispanic lawyers, but there isn't a big ratio of Hispanic lawyers as you do with Persian lawyers, Romanian lawyers, Jewish lawyers, etc. So it's like there needs to be more Hispanic lawyers that can represent the Hispanic community and speak the language, because I think there is a very critical need for services for Hispanic people that are basically suffering because of a imperfect system.
Yes, verdad. Yes, absolutely. Hispanics comprise 36% of the state's population, but only 6% of all California's licensed attorneys. So that's very skewed. But when you talk about public defenders, there are a couple of caveats to throw in. You can potentially get a deputy public defender who might be better than someone that you would just hire randomly out of the private sector. I've seen a few very good private public defenders, and I've seen them go up against seasoned prosecutors and run rings around them, and I just if you look at the latest Tom Girardi article in Los Angeles Times, written by Matt Hamilton a day or so ago, one of the things that you'll notice there is that Girardi is represented, I believe, by the public defender's office. Whether that, to what extent that helps them or hurts him, or is just a chute that he needed to go down because he's crying poverty. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to review that, but and of course there are also a very healthy number of deputy public defenders who are Latino. So the problem isn't entirely, like they're going to wind up with a public defender and therefore they're screwed. Things could work out for them, but yeah, there definitely needs to be more resources and more and better proportion. Again, 36% of the state population being Latino, and only 6% of the state's licensed attorneys being Latino, and that comes straight from the California State Bar.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's a complete travesty, because it's like, we are a big majority as a minority, but yet we are invisible in many areas, particularly when it comes to law. So, that really does need to change, because it just bothers me and disturbs me that Hispanics are the number one incarcerated people in the United States right now, more than communist China. Like, the United States is only 5% of the world's population, but yet we have the highest mass incarceration rate, for a country that is democratic. You would think, for a country that is authoritarian, like the People's Republic of China, that there will be more people incarcerated, and they actually have less people incarcerated than we do. So, there really needs to be a restorative justice reform. And at the same time, there needs to be justice that applies to all, not just for a few that are able to afford it. Because that is a critical issue that's happening in our country right now, that I'm seeing many people, because they lack the resources, or they don't know their rights, or know how the justice works. They're pretty much going into a jungle, not knowing, what they're going to face. So, this is something that I believe that if there are more lawyers that are Hispanic, that know the culture, know what's going on with the people, I think there can be better outcomes for Hispanic people that, unfortunately, unjustly, they get caught up in the system for different circumstances.
Absolutely, and that's why it's important that there should be many activists like you who get politically involved. And it's worth noting, again, as you noted at the beginning of the show, you and I met last week at the West Side Bar Associations. They had a panel of DA candidates. There were 14 or so of them there, and
Correct.
the man in the middle was the DA Gascon, and he is a reform candidate who would, if you talked with him, he would be very embracing of the concerns you have about mass incarceration and seeing some social justice, and not locking everyone up and throwing away the key. And I would tell me if you think I'm wrong, but one of the most common themes during that panel, or that debate, it was definitely a debate at times, was other prosecutors saying, you're messing everything up, and you're telling us not to use 3 strikes when we want to use 3 strikes, and you're telling us not to use certain enhancements you want us to use. So what that highlights, is that it's not only a matter of tweaking the laws, but also creating a political climate that aligns with these societal concerns.
Absolutely. Before the panel started, I actually had the pleasure of speaking with George Gascon. I gave him my card. He was very approachable. I actually thought he was very, very nice. I don't know why a lot of people have demonized him, like he's this horrible person. He's not perfect. He's human. He makes mistakes. But I would say, from the whole panel discussion, the only one that actually was normal and rational was Gascon, because because public safety is not supposed to be political, it's supposed to be apolitical. But what I saw in that public event is not the fact that you have people in the audience that were throwing personal insults at Mr. Gascon. Even saw people working with him like Mr. Hatami and other people that were making personal shots at him, and I thought that was very it's not just inappropriate, but it's very unethical and unprofessional. It's like, if one is going to be running for on the platform of public safety, like, one can express their disgust, they could mention their frustration, but by making it personal or political, it served no purpose. Like, anger, in my opinion, has no place in civil discourse. So I definitely do agree with you. I think Gascon is very progressive compared to other district attorneys of the past. And I feel that there needs to be more discussions about justice reform, because there's too many people getting incarcerated. And yes, I believe those that are legally convicted of doing a crime, they should be punished to the full extent of the law. But there needs to be rehabilitation when it comes to people that serve their time, because there's so much emphasis on punishment, there's not enough emphasis on rehabilitation. Like, for example, if you go to many countries in Asia, and again, I'm going to use the example of the People's Republic of China, which a lot of conservatives like to criticize. One of the reasons why they have a very low mass incarceration rate, aside from having very harsh draconian laws, they also put money and emphasis on rehabilitation. So people that are not serious offenders, let's say they stole something or they did something, whatever, for example, once they serve their time, they also rehabilitate them, and they put them into special centers where they could not only re-educate themselves, and when I mean re-educate themselves of being better citizens, but at the same time, they can reintegrate themselves into society. And this is something that I think we need, because there's a lot of people that once they serve their time, they come out and it's like, what do I do? How do I work? I have a record, and then it becomes a revolving door, that they commit a crime, go in again, and it becomes the same thing. So, there really needs to be also focus on rehabilitation, especially to those that meet the criteria, that they have proven that they have kept themselves, clean, if they were in drugs, or they have served their time, they kept themselves out of trouble. I think those people should be given an opportunity to reintegrate in society, and at the same time, they should have their records expunged, because what's the point if someone has done everything right, if they have a record that forbids them from getting a job? They're going to have barriers from becoming productive citizens in the future.
Absolutely, and one of the things that we see happening in our society is, there are the debates in the street, the political debates. We're getting ready for the primary now, and we see a lot of these discussions taking place in places like where we met last week. But once you're incarcerated, let's say you're Latino, you're a young man, you got convicted of a crime and you're incarcerated. That's a whole different, capitalist establishment there that exists primarily to serve its own best interest, not serve the inmate's best interest, but to serve its own capitalistic interests, which means, they're all good with the lock them up and throw away the key. And you saw recently, a week or so ago, there were some very organized riots, and they can organize riots because when, you take this young Latino man and you throw him in prison, not only are you not really doing a good enough job at rehabilitating him, but chances are he's going to be surrounded by gang members. And if he wasn't already a gang member before he went into prison, he's almost certainly going to become one very soon after they get in there. And, they sort of become, part of this for some it will be a school on how to learn to be a much more dangerous criminal.
Exactly,
And then
absolutely.
they'll get out, and not only do they not have these tools that you so rightly, articulate that they need, but they're in some ways been made even into more of a criminal than they were before they were thrown in. And these issues are the kinds of things that everyone in California knows this, and who's doing it, really, who's fixing it.
Mm. Absolutely. And, that's one of the reasons why, crime has become a primary concern to the public, because it's like, a lot of these people, especially when they are in prison, a lot of these, young people that are Hispanic, unfortunately, if they already were, having issues, well, they were on the outside. When they're inside, they're in there. It's like that's how the Mexican mafia formed. That's how the Nostra Familia formed. They formed in the prison. So they make their base of operation there, and then they cause problems to everybody else. So it's like there needs to be focus on rehabilitation, and at the same time, there needs to be ways to channel the anger that a lot of these young Hispanic men have, because one of the reasons why they join gangs is because they're angry. It's not the fact that a lot of them come from broken homes. A lot of them feel that they have been betrayed or they have been abandoned by the system or by the establishment, and they become easy prey for criminal organizations. And it saddens me that every time when a Hispanic young man is convicted of a crime and they get sent to prison, that further stigmatizes the Hispanic people. It's like we're only seen as two types of people, as either disposable workers or gang members. It's like society doesn't see us that we could be productive members of society, like civil servants, engineers, doctors, people that are educated. It's like we're seen as a pariah. So one of the things in Spanish United that we're trying to do is trying to change the image and the perception of the Hispanic people by promoting education, by promoting interrogation of Hispanics in the wider society. Because another issue that Hispanic people have is that they tend to self-segregate, they become insular, and that itself is not good. So I feel that Hispanic people, if they want to prosper and be successful, they need to integrate, they need to be part of society. At the same time, they need to educate themselves to better themselves, because like what Malcolm X said in one of his speeches, an education is a passport to the future, and that is rightfully so. Education opens doors to a lot of places. I've seen it in my lifetime, I've seen it in my personal life, and I've seen it with many people that have become educated and become successful. Education is really important for having mobile and economic mobility.
Absolutely, and I can't help but point out that this is a key year because of the presidential race, and Donald Trump, and taking aim at the illegal immigrant issues, and I don't think it's unfair to sort of conflate these issues we're talking about with the issues of illegal immigration to many Americans. They they're kind of one in the same, which kind of goes back to the endemic racism problem that you're talking about, trying to educate people away from. But when Donald Trump rolled down on his golden escalator eight or so years ago, and the first thing he did was he took a shot at Latino immigrants. These aren't our best people. They're rapists. They're murderers. And since then, he hasn't fixed anything in that area. Um, but it, the group of people that we're talking about here just continue to be a political football right now, just a tool in the campaign. There are things happening in immigration right now with the immigrants being shipped off to different cities and so forth, and you know this is gets people upset, and there are things there are bills that are bipartisan bills that can be approved right now, but the Republicans would rather not take action on those because they would rather just whatever the public perception is at the moment, how bad the immigrant problem is. And in many of their minds, that translates to how big the Latino problem is. They, the Republicans, I believe, use that just as a tool to make Biden look bad, and
Right.
of course, part of our greater problem in our democracy, where we are just one half that's waiting to undo what the other half has done, which means we're never moving forward and making progress on the real issues, and that's a dynamic that I really hope that we can push past at some point somehow.
I hope so too. Like right now, we are in what's called a flawed democracy. Prior to Donald Trump becoming president, we were a full-fledged democracy. We're like the rest of the industrialized world, and since he came and went, our democracy has become flawed. And if this continues, our democracy is going to become even more flawed. So hopefully this can be resolved soon because it's affecting everybody. Well, anyway, Howard, I wanted to tell you thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you taking your time being on the show. And for your listeners on Newsroom PR, Spanish United is available on all social media platforms. We are on Spanish United YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, now known as X, Instagram, and as soon as I finish with this meeting, I will email you the link and you can share it wherever you want to share it with. I really appreciate you being on the show, Howard.
Well, thanks again for having me anytime.
Have yourself a wonderful afternoon.
Okay, Enrique, you too. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.